Hi, I'm Milton Rendell and welcome to Real News Friday. Just thought I'd share a bit of a conversation that I had with a fellow agent over in New South Wales earlier today. Obviously, we look at where the market's going as agents and we've got to sort of be proactive rather than reactive. So I tend to speak to agents in the eastern states and try and see what trends are happening then, and then I speak to other agents in areas which are probably more active than we are in and around Midland and the hills, and try and piece together what possibly could be happening in the future. Not always 100% right, but it's usually a fairly good guide. So today I was speaking to an agent in New South Wales and I asked him how the market's going. I said, how are you going with stock? How are you going in terms of buyers? How are you going in terms of values? So the answers were basically, in terms of stock, there seems to be an increase of properties coming to the market over there, or properties are starting to take a little bit longer to sell. So that's the first observation. Second part about it is they are seeing, though still good numbers of buyers, the numbers have become slightly smaller, and that would be a byproduct of change of interest rates, and obviously the prices had reached to a certain level and started to soften there. And now, so I said to him, okay, so the market's starting to soften, where do you think it'll go? And he said, well, this particular stage, they're thinking that possibly some areas the prices may soften up a bit. Not come right down, it's just there is reckons a bit of movement, and by that, talking to the other agent, it's sort of we discussed it, and it tends to be in markets which are flying along, or people say are more boomish, you tend to get the one-off extra dividends or extra prices on properties, some one-off type sales which are a little bit above the norm because of shortage of supply. Thinks that possibly there'd be less of that happening in the marketplace going forward. Now, we look at West Australia to see where we're at. Last week sales were down about 10%. Number of sales about 792. Stock levels are at 8,682. Now that's up on where we were obviously a few months ago. We're up in terms of sort of stock level. It's around variations about 2% to what it was a year ago. So we seem to see have this like a flattening, if you like. In terms of inquiry in our local area, we're still getting good steady inquiry. And what I would still consider good inquiry, but basically are starting to see a little bit of the numbers drop off just slightly, and not as large as probably also happening in New South Wales. Now the other thing consideration is in West Australia we have a different economy in that because of mining's driving a few things. This is where the inflation part will come into a big equation, not particularly to Western Australia, because last time I think our inflation rate was slightly higher than the rest of the country, and we may see that happening again. Now in terms of renting, rental inquiry is still very heavy. 670 properties leased last week in West Australia. Stock levels were up about 1% of where they were probably a week ago, up about 3% on where they were a month ago. But again, that could be a small adjustment coming through. But we're still down 19.5% on what we were a year ago. So the stock levels are less. So it's a slightly different trend to where we are with sales. So we are seeing, probably, if you compare the two, it's probably seeing a softening in sales. It doesn't mean that our sales values will drop, but it certainly has moved in a different direction. Now, just on a different note, just the real estate industry itself is going through a number of changes. I'm noticing a number of brands either disappearing or agencies scaling back. Notably, there are a lot of companies out there that have been selling their rent rolls to larger companies, to non-local companies. It's something we certainly haven't done. We've maintained our portfolio, and we will continue to maintain our portfolio and look to grow our portfolio. We believe being a local agent is a benefit, means we understand the demographic mix better, means we can attend to things quicker, and basically having a local focus. So, but it is interesting, there has been a number of local agencies around in the surrounding area. We've probably over 1,000 properties have exchanged over to outside agents, which are well outside the area. So it'll be interesting to see how landlords deal with that going forward. I'm always a great believer in that local is certainly better for knowledge and certainly convenience, and it's certainly someone you can sit down and have a chat to. But again, that gets back to the landlord and the consumer. But just to let you know, Real Estate Plus, we certainly aren't following that pattern. We're certainly maintaining our portfolio, and we'll continue to do so and believe in local service, and that is, of course, employing people locally and managing properties locally as well. So just, but an interesting trend within the industry. Like I say, a number of them have moved their portfolios, sold their portfolios for whatever financial gain they've chosen to do. We have chosen not to do that. We think we prefer to stay a complete agency or a complete brand rather than fragmenting our services. So you're always welcome to have a chat to me about that, but it is an interesting trend within the industry. Anyway, thought a little bit of different news this week. I'll catch up with you and have a good chat next week. All the best. Check out realestateplus.com.au.